And now in the next hour, we're going to talk about design system. And first, we're going to kick it off with Zen Lara, and she's going to talk about collaborative structures in design systems. So give a warm welcome for Zen.
Hey, everybody. So I want to talk about the people part of design systems. Let's see what my next slide says. Yeah, a lightning talk about peopling. The most valuable resource in sustaining a generative and vibrant design ecology are your human collaborators. They're also like your biggest points of failure. So this is a talk about sustaining those relationships, really a relationship and intimacy-based look at how you work with your team and how you get people to value what you're doing together. And this has been something that has really transformed my interpersonal relationships. So turns out that the same things that can save your marriage can save your design system. Hi, I'm Zen, that's what I look like. I like to think of myself as a systems thinker because my look at design systems is really interdisciplinary. There's a lot of sociological analysis, ecological analysis, and systems have a lot of things in common. I designed my first design system in this lens in 2013. I'm a queer, disabled, Latinx community organizer, so really the big problems we're trying to solve, like accessibility or racism, they're pretty complex, so they have something in common with the complex problems that we're trying to resolve in tech. And there's this sense that they're really, really big problems, and the only way that we can make progress on them is incrementally, in little steps. It's gonna be generational. There's not really a sprint plan for resolving the issues of access. I'm also a relationships and embodied relating nerd. So in a lot of activist spaces, because the work that we do is really complex and really challenging and very much the traumas that we're carrying are in our bodies, we try and use the body as a resource instead of constantly fighting against it. So instead of fighting against burnout, recognize the burnout and plan for it. Instead of fighting those frustrations or that feeling of not being heard, name that thing. So that's what I mean by embodied relating. Yes. So the first time that I created a design system, I made it cute. I thought, okay, branding, that's how I'll get people to be committed to this idea. We'll make stickers, and it will be great. The stickers were great, but a design system that just begs to be loved and nurtured isn't really a foundation for relationships that you can build on. It's like a needy thing that never grows up. Eventually, you want it to make it feel like it's expanding your capacity, not draining your capacity. So Kabu is very cute. So today, the format of my talk is really going to be me reverse engineering the stories that led to some of the things that I say all the time to my design and organizing teams. So these are the things I say and their stories. Yes, negotiate your relationship with your collaborators. Be specific. What I mean by this is when you enter into a relationship with someone and you're trying to meet goals together, you're trying to create a design system, and usually that's we're trying to increase consistency and efficiency, and that's about as specific as we get. And then those relationships that we start off on that foot are expected to have promises fulfilled, and then we're upset when those promises don't get fulfilled. When part of it was the promises weren't specific enough. So I work at an agency. A lot of times when we're partnering with clients, they have different levels of maturity in their design systems. Some of them are looking to partner with us to expand the capacity of a team that has already done a lot of legwork in thinking about the philosophy that's guiding their design system. So what they want are really competent designers that can come be on their team. Other clients, they want someone to do all of the thought leadership and research. They want someone that can collaborate with them in that way and give them like a roadmap on how to keep this thing going. If we're not specific about the level of collaboration, the kinds of collaboration that we want, then we end up just like silently resenting each other. Again, this is very much human relating in general, but it happens in design systems too. So asking for what you want and need. In embodied leadership and activism, this is what fuels the progress that we can make. People being connected to what their actual needs are without shame. So if your team is a team where you are purists, and if someone goes off the design system, they are publicly shamed for not knowing better, that creates a sense that their needs don't matter because they do this for a reason. If that reason is a lack of clarity, a lack of communication, a lack of documentation, they didn't know it existed, those things are valid and they're useful to be brought to the forefront. And those things can't be discussed if you have like an aura of shame around it. And just generally, shame is canceled, so no more shame. Each person who is on your team, each collaborator, they need to feel safe to advocate for their needs and desires, and a certain level of autonomy in doing that. So these conversations determine the scope of your work together and also help you define as a group what accountability looks like. So at the agency where I work, we found that peer-led meetings about our wins and frustrations on the regular. We created a container that was neutral. We had this meeting every week. And when we first started it, there was a lot of things on fire. So it turned into like this is your safe space. You can talk about the things that are hurting you right now. And eventually that turned into a space where a lot of things can grow and a lot of inspiration hit. But it was that creation of a space of safety where people felt like they could be vulnerable about the ways that they were not really buying into the design system, where they felt like it was getting in the way more than it was helping. Because we had these peer-led, there weren't managers present, there were just like team leads, but there wasn't anyone who was like, design systems being a good idea is my baby, and it needs to be a good idea. Because they were peer-led and they were facilitated discussions and not like, here's the agenda, here's everything we're gonna look at, people felt like they could self-advocate, like their voice mattered. It was in this space, now that we had a neutral container that was frequently, whether there were fires or not, that was maintained, we had a venue where we could start bringing in people who weren't a part of the design systems conversation before. So our accessibility consultants now sit in on this meeting. Folks from legal compliance will sometimes know that they can drop into this meeting. It's open to them. So we started to be able to include people who really wanted to have more involvement and more of a voice in this place where it wasn't like they didn't have to set up a presentation, they could just come and see. So that's been really useful. Your values determine your goals, and your goals determine your responsibilities. I say this all the time to everyone, to my kids, like everyone. Your responsibilities, there isn't something like inherently pure or good about not using a different button. If you have a sense of you want to not have to think about buttons, and that's because that goal based on your value that people should be free to come up with new solutions for things that are interesting, you don't want people spending their time thinking about buttons, then those things ladder together. If it's just you have a responsibility to police buttons without meaning, it starts to feel really weird. We've had people at the office who are like depressed when they walk out of a meeting and all they've talked about is the wrong button. So how do we do that? We start each project naming the values that are guiding us. And that's something that is established, even if it ends up being the same thing every single time. The fact that the people who are on the design systems team are getting to think through that exercise of naming what those values could be. That is in part to create a sense of co-ownership and to allow an opportunity for new values to emerge. There was a talk today about design ethics, and that's something that's been coming up a lot in conversations around design systems. And having a space where it's just peers together and they start talking about what their values are and the conversation of ethics comes up, all of a sudden you have like an employee resource group for queer people and you're living my life. So like you are able to start advocating in more specific ways when you're having these conversations at the forefront. Like I said, feeling co-ownership faster, feeling agency faster. Be right-sized with your efforts, trust your gut. This again goes to embodiment. You're not just a brain, you're a whole body, and sometimes you can't really articulate why something feels off to you. We've probably all had those moments where you're like, ugh, I just resent that that's even a thing that I have to think about right now, but you can't articulate why, so you kind of go along with it. And these things build up, and they start to create conflict, a lot of times quiet conflict on your teams and with your collaborators, because it doesn't feel important enough, or it doesn't feel like you can bring it up unless you have a solution. So sometimes just being vulnerable with the fact that there's a thing and you're not quite sure why, but you're not into it, can actually help a lot. Most people, when you're orienting, like, I have this question. We're all problem solvers. We're trying to solve the problems together, but being vulnerable with just those like gut hunches has been really useful for us. Embodied design systems feel like an expansion of your capacity as a collective rather than another thing to maintain. So if every time you have a concern or a desire and those things can be named, and even if they're not immediately acted upon, they are considered and they're heard, and the fact that you're sharing is seen as valuable in your collaboration, then it starts to feel good. And I wish there was a better way of saying that, but sometimes words get in the way. It starts to feel good that you're making this thing. It starts to feel like you're gaining superpowers together. It doesn't feel like you're secretly resenting somebody in your team who made this thing that could have been amazing worse because you didn't speak up, because you didn't feel like you'd be heard. Yeah, you don't need the solution to trust your team with the problem. And that also means that your team has to be creating a space of safety where your voice is included and valued and integrated. So many of the conversations we have about diversity in tech, it's really, this is what we're trying to get at. We're trying to get at how do we include people's voices so that they can be a part of the solution, where they feel like it would be worth their while to do the labor of explaining the problem. Let go of ideal solutions and design for the problems you actually have with the bandwidth you actually have. I'm not a moral purist when it comes to design systems. Sometimes you will have, and this is one of the reasons that I love Figma, just the act of creating design starts to give you something that you can start adding documentation for in the tool, and you don't have this like separate object that you're trying to maintain and perform a design system. Like, this is our design system website, and it does this thing. It's design system as a product. Sometimes, if you're aiming for the ideal solution, you get behind on the progress that you've made. You're not able to recognize the progress that's already been made just from thinking about these things. Yeah, we didn't get into this to be the button police. It's really more like these things are symptoms of problems, and we like to talk about the symptoms a lot, when really it's communication and documentation and experimentation that is often missing, rather than like one person who's always using the rogue button. That's usually not their intention, to just like ruin your life. If you're spending time telling people they're using the wrong button, just what are you doing with your life? And I love a well-prepared first responder. Plan for fires. This is part of what our regular neutral container, our meeting for design systems, started to help us with. We started them because there were fires. Then we started having them less frequently, and there were hardly ever fires. But when there were fires, we were so calm. We're like, we know that the design system meeting is happening next Tuesday. We're just going to walk in there and be like, hey, did y'all see? That was a fire. This is what we started to do about it. Let's work together and address it. There was already a container for that. Nobody had to take it on themselves to be like, oh no, now I have to point out this problem. We have to have this sense of urgency, and now everything has to feel super stressful. So being able to just know that we had planned for these things allowed us to bring a clearer head to the problem. Yeah, we even literally kept the item of things on fire on the agenda, even when we hardly ever had any fires anymore. So really, it comes down to trust, collaboration. Assume your specific contribution is essential, and find the best way to make that contribution. Meet with your team in ways that foster your relationships to each other, and talk as collaborators. Thanks.